Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia, is stuck. His own government is displaying symptoms of failing nearly 8 months after he began a significant conventional invasion to overthrow the Zelensky administration and establish political power in Ukraine. His most recent decisions to address the political issues brought on by Ukraine's successful counteroffensive in the east and south have made matters worse with Russia. After Moscow's campaign to seize the entirety of the Donbas was halted by Ukraine, a counteroffensive was launched. It made remarkable strides and by mid-September had recaptured more land than Moscow had since April. Following Ukraine's victory, municipal leaders all around Russia called for Putin to step down, and uber-nationalists who insisted on escalating the conflict till victory sharply criticized the war effort. Additionally, they led Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi, two of Putin's BRIC friends, to criticize his approach to the Ukraine at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization conference in Samarkand. Putin responded with 3 risky moves: a partial mobilization to restock his troops in Ukraine, dubious referendums in 4 Ukrainian oblasts only partially under Russian control, and ever less subtly statements from senior Russian officials that these territories could be protected from further Ukrainian attacks by all means available to the Kremlin, including nuclear weapons. In order to avoid enlisting Russians to fight, Putin launched his invasion of Ukraine as a special military operation, not a war. He felt in his bones that the Russian people had little interest in fighting his war on Ukraine, despite Levada Center surveys showing strong majority support for it. In other words, they regarded the Kremlin's assertion that Russia's existence depended on what happened in Ukraine as gibberish. Putin attempted to play this down by referring to it as a partial mobilization. The maneuver, however, was a failure because it caused hundreds of thousands of draft-age men to flee the country, sparked violent protests in Dagestan, from which Moscow had already taken a disproportionate number of soldiers bound for Ukraine, attacked draft boards and recruiting officers in 20 cities, and was followed by numerous reports on social media of newly enlisted soldiers who were ill-equipped and forced to buy their own supplies. Senior individuals including Duma Speaker Vyacheslav Volodin, Federation Council President Valentina Matviyenko, and RT CEO Margarita Simonyan have opposed the mobilization's implementation since it has become so problematic for the Kremlin. If only the Tsar knew is a tried and true strategy in Russian administration to shield the head of state when a policy fails. Putin had anticipated that by raising nuclear tensions, the West, and particularly the United States, would put pressure on Zelensky to halt the counteroffensive in the areas that Moscow now claims. Such threats appeared to be effective earlier this year as senior Biden administration officials repeatedly stated that they would not facilitate the supply of MiG fighter jets to Ukraine or provide longer-range weaponry out of fear of upsetting Moscow. But it didn't work this time. Both publicly and privately, Biden warned Moscow that using nuclear weapons, even tactical low-yield nukes, would have disastrous repercussions for Russia. What's more, the counteroffensive keeps on. On September 30th, Putin took procedures in Moscow to formally annex those lands, but the following day he was embarrassed when Ukraine grabbed control of the vital logistics town of Lyman in the Donetsk Oblast. Since then, Ukrainian forces have kept moving east and are almost close to taking control of the entire right bank of the Dnipro River in the vicinity of the vital city of Kherson. On October 8, Ukraine partially blew up the bridge over the Straits of Kerch, which supplies crucial supplies for Russian soldiers in both Crimea and Kherson. This was bad news for Putin on both a political and strategic level at home. Once more, Putin's brutal retaliation, a huge bombing campaign intended to kill civilians and destroy Ukraine's infrastructure, particularly its energy grid, was aimed at appeasing Russian hawks. While the campaign is said to have momentarily cut off 30% of Ukraine's energy supply, it also led NATO to decide to deliver Kyiv more advanced anti-aircraft systems, which it had previously refused to send. This will strengthen Ukraine's military capabilities even more and make it more difficult for Russia to turn around its declining military fortunes. Unsurprisingly, all of this has made Moscow even more uneasy. Important regime figures are beginning to set themselves up for success under Putin. At the highest levels, there is currently a blame game on to justify Moscow's mistakes in Ukraine. The main targets are Colonel General Alexander Lapin, commander of Russia's Central Military District, Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, and Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov. Yevgeny Prigozhin, a friend of Putin and the leader of the Wagner mercenaries, has targeted Shoigu and the 2 generals on Telegram. However, Shoigu also has the resources to fight back, which may be the reason Alexei Slobodanyuk, a media advisor for Prigozhin, was recently detained. Ramzan Kadyrov, a powerful figure in Chechnya, has teamed up with Prigozhin to fight Shoigu and the generals. Putin has shrewdly avoided taking a visible role in this, although he just given Kadyrov a boost by elevating him to Colonel General. We'll have to wait and see what this implies for Russian strategy, but Kadyrov's recent actions on the conflict highlight Putin's predicament. By promoting the use of tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine, Kadyrov did the simple thing and gained international attention. His public pronouncements, however, conveniently note that Chechnya has been overrepresented on the Ukraine front up to this point, despite his recognition of the political toxicity of mobilization. Even while Kadyrov's lieutenants are working behind the scenes to recruit some conscripts, he will not jeopardize his position in Chechnya by publicly urging more Chechens to fight there. None of this indicates that Putin will be deposed anytime soon. Simply put, our understanding of Russian power relations is insufficient. However, the Putin government is beginning to show significant cracks, making this the most precarious time in the Putin era. According to Russian history, losing wars is not healthy for tyrants or monarchies and frequently results in liberalizing change, as it did in 1905, 1917, and 1989. Putin is giving more harsh warnings that he would use nuclear weapons unless Ukraine stops its present counteroffensive in the freshly annexed areas of Ukraine that are not entirely controlled by the Kremlin, in an effort to avert defeat in Ukraine and this fate. Hi, thanks to watch. Make sure you like and subscribe.